So, yeah, they, I guess, came up through there, along here. Well, they literally did just come right past me here, and the officer in the passenger side seat literally rolled down their window and said, hello. And I was like, hello. And, yeah. Your guess is as good as mine. Well, if you can't tell, it's been a rather dreary day so far. But, well, right now, the precipitation seems to be slowing down a bit, which is, well, after the heavy downpour last night, quite welcome, at least from my perspective. But I am thankful for its elimination of a certain odor, which I'll get into later in this video. So, I'm just gonna throw this in here at the beginning, because it occurred to me that I didn't really explain this, and I want to. These were some other updates, I guess you could call them, to my theoretical work and scientific implementations. Well, one of them, the first one I'll mention, isn't a revision of any kind. It's just I didn't really, going back and rewatching the footage, I don't believe I mentioned it at all in, well, my scientific proposal videos, or, well, my thought process behind it. But I want to, I guess, further elaborate to some degree. After these I'll just kind of whipping down the corner here. Okay. Yeah, I don't know who has the right of way, but, well, I don't abide either way. I want to just further explain a bit of my thought process, one behind my remodeling of the political spectrum for the political fi/political fe. So, one, as I'll say, go watch the scientific proposal videos, but if you already have, then you should have some idea of what I'm talking about. So, I mentioned that in part 5 of said videos, that I believe that morally and ideological values, the spectrum for both ends, leftism, rightism, and then, well, what is considered centrism, basically it gets to a point where, though having, I would say, to some degree distinctive ethical stances, or at least what they claim to have, at a certain point in relation to far left, far right, and extremist center, they basically almost ideologically become the same thing, and morally, as far as I regard it. And the same goes for the lower end of the spectrum towards general centrism, center leftist and center rightist. It can be said that they become practically an amalgamated branch of ideologic belief, which is why I also believe in what could be considered a lower political gray area and an upper political gray area on said phi/fe shaped spectrum. But as well as that, not only, as I mentioned that for the most part, but not only do I think that they do have distinctive ideals separate from one another, and to some degree morally how they enact them could be different, even though if essentially they're condoning the exact same behavior socially and implementing many of the same tactics as the opposing side pretty well. But they also, why I think they are still separate but almost become the same ideals, is because they each have separate political end goals in terms of the actual philosophies and ideologies. So far left, far right, and extremist center, they all have separate end result values and goals for how societal organization would be, what it would look like. Even, again, with the cognitive dissonance there of utilizing and morally condoning the same tactics for implementation. So there are distinct, but the reason, again, separate, and I don't like the argument that certain leftists come up with, that those leaning, I guess, more towards the far left aren't true leftists. Well, they are. They have a separate end ideal than those of far right. At least just on a general dictation. And again, though, ethically, I think they become the same thing. Practically. What they get done. And as well as that, so that was what I wanted to elaborate on for the political phi/political fest spectrum in my sociological implementations. And another thing I'll elaborate on quickly is that of my theory of globalized social paranoia in psychosociology. So I went over in part 1 of my scientific proposal videos at the end when I talked about it, about basically going through various historical events that have shaped various cultural and social practices, and have also caused a shifting in, well, how people present their emotional state, and how the effects that it actually has on people's cognitive psychological function. But now I just will make it clear. Yes, where the timeline started is not where all paranoid disorder started. As far as I'm concerned, yes, there were horrible atrocities committed by various civilizations centuries prior in various regions of the world. But where I started with mapping out the timeline from feudalist Europe, Central Europe mainly, or a bit of expansion from what would have been feudalist Japan in Eastern Asia, and maybe up into the now modern day Eastern Russia, but Siberian Plateau. Where I started in terms of mapping out the timeline, that's where I believe that globalized social paranoia first started to mainly kick off centuries ago, and how it has further and further and further become rampant throughout the global populace, affecting 1 in every 3 people. So, I just thought I'd state that. Enjoy the rest of the video. So, welcome to St. Leonard. It's, well, okay, so I've been here for, right now, a total of 3 days. And I can easily say, out of the 3 boroughs of Montreal, including St. Leonard, that I have been to so far, it's easily, well, the most sprawling one in terms of, well, activity. And same goes for its business output in terms of economics. Not, though, in any sort of, well, uplifting or beneficial. I mean, now, it's mainly comprised, at least in this half of the district, of small businesses. And I've frequented a few of them so far. And, well, they're all fantastic. But, well, you'll see. As heavy depravity, as usual. But, as far as I'm concerned, unlike more so in Anjou, the disparity doesn't shine as heavily in the area as the, well, actual sense of community does, from what I've seen. Now, just to state, I've only been in the southern portion of the St. Leonard district as of these past 3 days. But don't worry, soon enough I will make my way northbound just to check it out. As, well, I'm curious to see a specific one specific area in particular. Let me just cross now. One area in particular that's right beside a very well-known park here in the city. In fact, it's, from what I can tell, the largest public park in all of Montreal. And it's also where I happen to be camped right now. I believe it's called Minizivu Park, I think. Something along those lines. I'll have to look at the name again on Google Maps. And it houses, in terms of what's built on its property, the Biodome of Montreal, the Montreal Tower, as you will have seen at the beginning of this video, and just below that, the Olympic Stadium that was constructed many decades ago for the 1976, I think it was the Winter Olympics here in Montreal that was hosted by Canada, I think. But, well, it's a very pretty sight to see, but again, as typical with me, not a fan of its usage. I would be if it was utilized for something else. You know, housing for many, many of the city's inhabitants, because it could use it. But regardless, well, still a very it's a very appealing sight to see, just on a physical level. And its architecture is very interesting given its slanted design. And so that whole area that houses said park is in a neighborhood called Rosemont, or its full name, Rosemont-le-Petit-Pierre, I think. But it's usually just shortened to Rosemont. Let's cross now. But that's towards the eastern end of the district. Where am I now, you might be asking? Well, this is a neighborhood in the more so southwestern end of the borough that's called Little McGrub. And for those of you who don't know what McGrub means, which before, for a second, when I first got here, I was a bit confused on the name, because, well, the McGrub is a region in northwestern Africa that encompasses much of, well, the Sahara Desert of the northern part of the continent. And in terms of countries, it is made up of Morocco, Western Sahara, most of Mauritania, I believe, Algeria, Libya, the northern half of Mali. I don't think all of Mali is included in that, but I know the northern half at least is. And I also believe portions of northern Senegal will be counted, and Niger. So that's the continental region of the Maghreb. And when I had first gotten here, and I also had seen the name, I was confusing it for, I thought Maghreb was a city in Morocco, but I wasn't exactly confusing it because I knew Marrakesh is a major city in the country, but I also thought Maghreb might have been a city in the country of Morocco, but I was wrong about that. So, something new I learned. And the reason it's called that is because the community around here is predominantly of Arab descent, as well as a mixture of, well, it's mainly Northern African Arab descent, along with mixture of Middle Eastern Arab descent and Persian descent for Central Asia, and some amount of Turkish and Armenian and Azerbaijani populace. And, oh, moving fast. And with that, there is a small percentage of those who are of sub-Saharan African black descent, and those of Mexican or Guatemalan descent. But predominantly, as said, culturally and ethnically, it is more so Arab dominant in terms of those taking up residency here for housing and businesses, as well as in terms of religious spiritual belief, predominantly Islamic. And I believe down one of, is it this one? No, it might be that one over there. Down one of these roads, I know that there's a mosque of some kind, or will be counted, I guess, as just a Muslim worship center of some kind, other than maybe other than a traditional mosque. But there's also around here somewhere a synagogue for Jewish worship. As I believe in that regard, there's also, given that it has those of Middle Eastern populace, some amount of those of Israeli nationality inhabit the area too, and no doubt Palestinian as well. But in terms of, well, my explorations in the area, this one street, the main boulevard, Jean Talon, running through the neighborhood, has reminded me a lot of Toronto in many ways, specifically to some degree of the Kensington Market neighborhood, which if I'm recalling correctly, in Toronto is, where is it? What district? Is that North York? That might be either York or North York. One of the two, I think. Now, I've only been to Kensington Market 2 times in my life. Once was for a field trip, and that was an absolute nightmare mess of a field trip. But that's a story for another time. And the second time was actually a few months before leaving the city myself, when I went on a bike ride down there at around maybe 11 at night, and I got something to eat quick pulling off into Kensington Market from the main road, which, looking back, was very clearly pseudo-segregated off from the main bustling roadway. Now, this area is, as far as I'm concerned, thriving a lot more than in the modern day Kensington Market is, or at least last I've heard of it and seen of it, which I'm very happy about. That's not any sort of slander against Kensington Market. I hope that they'd be able at some point to do somewhat better for those businesses that are suffering in the area, but, well, I think you know what I mean. But sadly, similarly to Kensington Market, this place has its fair share of mass inequality and inequity. As if you'll notice more so, as I've somewhat been filming down certain side roads, and as well as you could probably tell just on the main stretch here, we'll find a whole slew of crumbling infrastructure, similar to that of what was down the side roads of the central area of Anjou when I was there last. And, well, with how bustling the area is, it's no doubt that, at least to me, two things occur in relation to real estate pricing. And those who are tenants of the one-bedroom to studio apartments that are built above or below most of these businesses. That being, either because of the mass structural underdevelopment of the area for most of the actual architectural placements, as I'm sure, again, you can tell. Well, companies that sell off the housing units and the business renting spaces will either tell them, those who are becoming clientele of theirs, that it will be costly, at least to some degree, that they'll promise to hook them up with their own personal programs or slower methods of payback to actually tailor it to their budget, so-called, or what they can afford for taking up a renting space. But it'll be costly because of repairs that need to be done due to, you know, the piss-poor conditions of the structural integrity and general maintenance of the facilities. Wow, you're very low to the ground. Don't know why that is, considering you're taking off from PT International. Oh. Anyway. So, costly because of exterior and internal structural maintenance that needs to be done. Or secondly, because of so-called high demands for the area being somewhat, to some degree, of a tourist center, not for most coming internationally to Montreal for vacation and exploration, but I guess more so domestically within Canada to some degree. So, value being risen up because of that on the market, as well as the fact that many of those who are also in financial desperation for somewhat affordable renting, or what is so-called deemed to be affordable, but still massively profit siphoning. Well, what is... Hold on, I lost my train of thought just once. Okay, just regained it. So what is deemed to be high value in terms of needed housing for those of lower income? Thus, the realtors and also various other landlords who have purchased up property to then sell it off after doing paradeals or just solely purchasing it and having to pay back the real estate companies that they bought it from, as well as banking companies that have, well, helped in terms of the landlord's payments of the facilities, some form of investment in it. Well, the value is so-called risen, so they demand more from those actually living in the area. And it takes a massive toll. And not only that, well, combined with that exploitation, the massive amounts of policing and cultural oppression that occurs in the area, as I've noticed, considering that patrol units are a constant sight in this area for the most part. And oh, well, speak of the devil. Wait, are you police or are you... Oh no, you're paramedic. Oh, never mind. That's an interesting... Oh. Cars are usually designed purely for cruisers. Oh, okay, never mind. But regardless, there's still frequent, a constant presence in the area to a detrimental extent. Massively. And on top of that as well, in terms of municipal governmental enforcement, or in terms of communal protection, well, those two sounded like they were in an argument of some kind. Not entirely sure though. Anyway, the lack of beneficial construction needed to redo and also keep up communal care for the area, such as roadways being redone where they've placed concrete and tar, water lines being placed and kept up with in terms of repairs on piping, as for certain things such as fountains and parks, I've noticed well, no I've noticed no attempt to repair them in coordination with the mega corporate aqua companies for water piping and control, running of water to various building units. And most of all, which I'll get into in a minute, care of sanitation for waste disposal in terms of garbage control and collecting and dispersing, and also, if they can, destroying waste materials or recycling materials that can be reconstructed. It's severely lacking all throughout this entire neighborhood, and pretty well the entirety of the southern half of St. Leonard. Now, I don't know about the northern half yet, half of this district yet, as I haven't been to it as of right now. But, well, you get the point. And another thing I will demonstrate and talk about in this video, but I'll just give a bit of a quick well, display of how frequent activity like this is. So I passed by this abandoned building last night, and as you can tell, well, various individuals clearly affiliated to not so savory syndicates within the city have left their markings at a constant rate. So yeah, just get a look at that. Again, the artwork is very nice for the most part. Very well done. I'm still impressed by the level of precision in hand-eye coordination you would need for that, to do it freehand without any sort of tracing material. Especially for that. That's a damn cool and well done gang tag. But not a fan of the fact, obviously, you know, that it's a gang tag. But damn, this building is, yeah, it's completely littered with it. And also, interestingly enough, notice this place, I guess, used to be a business that was leasing an area in this building. Which, if you remember from the end bit of Exploring Laval Part 5, was one of the small business restaurants that have about maybe 4 locations in the greater Montreal area. That, well, yeah, that I just showcased. So, and they maybe had a 5th location here, or this was one of their 4 locations, but they had to move from the place because they couldn't afford to either keep up with costly expenses, or the actual operators of the facility couldn't keep up with their own costly expenses and had to, well, vacate the place and close it down. Also, yeah, I'm going to talk about things relating to, well, how high some of these markings are. Well, so, anyway. Everything that I've just said is not, as you'll see in a bit, is not just true for Little McGraw. In terms of cultural aesthetic and operation, and an amount of communal support, it's a fantastic place to be. There are very caring people in it. But in terms of all the rest of the shit that I just went over, not so much. But now I'm going to make my way, if I can get my sense of direction correct here, because last night I also, ironically, got lost in the area, actually. As it's taken me a bit to kind of get my bearings on where everything is in terms of the road structuring. But, well, I'm going to make my way down to a community center that's in the central southern half of the borough. So, I'll get back to you once I do that. Oh, Coach Tard and Bell Communications, 2 formidable foes of financial friendliness. I actually didn't even notice that there was a Bell Communications building here the first time. I have no clue what branch of the company you are, if you're for the electricians or telemarketers or whatever else. Sales representatives, well, actually, telephone operators and sales representatives technically could be the same thing. But anyway, you are just at every fucking corner. I mean it. You are all over Quebec. There is not a corner of a busy intersection you can go to without seeing Couche-Tard convenience just sitting right there in all of its fucking privatized, expansionist fuckery. Bullshit. Your guys' authoritarian lust for greed is, well, it knows no bounds. Alright. I might be wrong about this, but I can't help but feel this graffiti drawing may be a bit of an anti-Semitic or Islamophobic design, and purposely so. Again, though, I could be wrong, but given the locale, maybe. Just maybe. And also, that is the first time I've seen a tag design that, well, is in Eastern Asian Cyrillics in terms of alphabet. It's looked to be either Mandarin Chinese or Cantonese. Definitely, yeah, that's definitely a Chinese language in terms of, again, just its lettering, but, oh, interesting. But, as you'll see later on, there's plenty more markings for territorial representation to come. Yep, definitely think it was anti-Semitic or Islamophobic. Aha, so I'm on this side of the area. Okay, so over there is where the public activity center and library for Rosemont, the neighborhood over this way in St. Leonard is. And from what I've noticed, there must be at least some amount of Eastern European, particularly Ukrainian and Hungarian, maybe even Belarusian inhabitants of the area, given various cultural attires I've seen being worn by people out and about, and certain businesses as well. But obviously, I noticed this last night, a Ukrainian Orthodox church. And the park is actually named, the park down nearby it is named Ukraine Park. Or actually, okay, wait, or is this Ukraine Park? Okay, either. Okay, well, I know there's one also called, I think I was in it yesterday, and it wasn't Ukraine Park. It might have been Isadora Park? I know it began with an I. Okay, maybe this is Ukraine Park. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm completely incorrect on that. But, well, okay. Before getting to the activity center, I'm gonna try and see if the church is actually open so I can take a look inside it, as I have always wanted to see the inner, well, common cultural architectural designs of various Orthodox Christian churches of Eastern Europe, Russian churches, Ukrainian churches, Latvian churches, Georgian churches, Armenian churches, things of the sort. But, well, Armenia, Eurasia, same with Georgia, but, well, I'm just gonna see if I can. And I noticed someone who appeared to be a city worker of some kind taking the food disposal bins off the curbs of the sidewalks and just placing them in a neat row somewhat closer to the center of the actual roadway. And I have a guess as to why that is, to ease the burden on the garbage disposal workers, which again, I will mention soon enough. But anyway, let me see if I can actually get into this church. Well, seemed what are these egotistical morons doing? Oh, I couldn't tell what they were saying, but in relation to their jobs, I'm sure it could be nothing of benefit, most likely. Well, I think I've found an area that's even more impoverished and infrastructurally damaged than all the rest that I've been to in southern St. Leonard as of current. Okay, up close maybe it has a bit more Hungarian influence in it than Ukrainian, but either way, definitely Eastern or Central Eastern European architecture. Unfortunately, all three of the main doors are locked. Which, by the way, every time I go, I've even gone to churches like to try and open the doors on Sundays, when, you know, a holy day that would most often have certain churches be in operation. I'm starting to think these front doors are just for decoration and you can't even actually open them without some sort of maybe they have a lock that specially locks it just to keep it preserved like this until a very very important event ceremonially. I'm not sure, but is there another way around? Well, oh, it has another staircase. Might as well try it. Now, I walked around through this area, or at least close by it, last night, and, well, I've yet to explore further down that way. But, again, I'm noticing, as I said, more Eastern European influence in it, with some amount of Eurasia. But, oh, yeah, I don't know where I was going with that. I just thought I'd make that observation and say it out loud. Yeah, I'm actually going to try and test something with trying to get into this place. This door is locked as well, and what a lovely little surprise waiting for me once I got to the top of the staircase. Nice. Well, actually, I didn't notice you. You are damn well done. It's a very intricate drawing. It's very simplistic. And it's to some degree unnerving, but I think that's the point. Very nice. Performative activism never ends, does it? Oh, hello. That's interesting. Huh. Very interesting. Well, I guess to some degree you guys are taking notes from Laval contracting companies and development companies. Oh, I can definitely say this is a nice touch. This looks like it was done by someone of the actual community here. Just taking up residence in one of these homes, not by the city. Oh. It's nice to see. That's all I have to say about that. It's pleasant. So, I'm filming this much later in the day than all the clips that you have seen before this of the mounds of trash heaps at the sides of curbs here in this area of St. Leonard. And, well, a lot has happened in the last few hours, but I'll get to that in a sec. But in terms of actually gathering those short clips, I practically went all around the entirety of the western half of the Rosemont neighborhood, and almost ended up going all the way back to Little McGraw to see if I could find adequate amounts of garbage, which are all over the place, but ones that would really demonstrate how severe the problem is here in the city. So, yeah, that happened, and then I didn't end up going to the activity center first. I did that and something else after making my way away from the Eastern European Orthodox Church. And then, then after all that, came to here, which is connected. The center is connected to the public library for Rosemont, which I have not been in yet. Haven't really had the chance to. But both have free public Wi-Fi. So I've just been taking the opportunity to use that when I can. But anyway, so since now being here in Montreal for about 2 weeks, there is definitely one major element of the city that I've picked up on. Now, it's a negative one, very negative, and it falls in line with everything else I've ranted about. But, okay, so just let me state. Noticing things here, being in Montreal and exploring now the districts of Montreal Nord, Anjou, and now here in St. Leonard, there's a vast array of, in the highly suppressed and smaller clumps of minority communities, and as well as even in majority communities, incredible communal functioning in terms of cultural practice and pro-social human interaction, and willingness to just, in general, even so much as slightly provide some amount of help to your fellow neighbors, as far as I've seen. And specifically relating to culture, various ethnic and national cuisines, dishes from various restaurants of all sorts of demographic backgrounds. They, from the ones I've tried, are fantastic, incredibly well constructed, food-wise, and authentic. terms of actually making the dishes. Some obviously not being able to afford non-processed ingredients, but nonetheless. But in relation to smell, the aromas emitting from various establishments, restaurants, bars, bakeries, cafes, dessert shops, things of the sort. They all, in those pockets in front of the establishments, the air smells fantastic. It's incredibly enticing, and, well, it's very soothing. But the second I step out of the line of... As soon as I step out of the air pocket where the smells, the odors coming from the restaurants, and all the rest, as soon as I step out of where they're located, I have picked up on the fact that this city smells like absolute shit. No, I mean it. Montreal smells wretched, rank, horrible. And I mean it might seem like I'm over exaggerating how excruciatingly awful this metropolitan area smells. It is a nightmare. No, it's an assault on my nasal senses. The second you're in any other space in Montreal, especially on a swelteringly hot day, it is disgusting. See, even the kitty cats are very upset by the odor. I don't know what was going on. I don't know where that was. I hope the two cats are not fighting. I hope they're alright. It's on sometimes in certain areas to me, it's unbearable. I put up with it, obviously. This is nothing, as far as I can tell, in the immediate that I can do other than not contribute to it as best I can. But on the days in relation to the heat, where air pollution, smog, fills the skies and there's a huge cluster of it clouding over top of the city and coming so low, where the smog clouds come right to the ground level of the streets, it is barely breathable. It is the worst, not just the worst city, the worst place I've ever smelt. Out of everywhere I've traveled to, everywhere I've lived in my life that I can recall, Montreal is hands down the most foul smelling human settlement that I have ever set foot in. And there's a reason for that, as I've been researching. So, this city is very clearly in the middle of a garbage crisis. Because, well, when I started picking up on this, which was fairly quickly once I actually got into the Montreal Nord borough, as it's, out of all the places I've been in Montreal, right now, I would say Montreal Nord has it the worst in terms of buildup of trash. Once I started taking notice of this, I also noticed that garbage trucks controlled by the city, in terms of, well, it would be the Ministry of Environmental Protection and Sanitation. They've been frequently going up and down the streets taking trash, not just one day. I've seen trucks patrolling the streets and taking as much garbage as they can at least 3 days a week in a row. Not spaced out, just one after another after another. It might even, I think maybe it's 4 days. But I know at the very least they've been going up and down roads in various subdivisions across the city constantly throughout the week. Well, weeks, throughout the various weeks, including this one. And you can tell, in relation again to the fumes that linger over this municipality. You can smell when the trucks are close. No, I'm serious. You can smell them from half a block away. Like, there have been times where when I was in Anjou, when I'd be walking down the roads, and I'd be smelling the general very unpleasant odor of the waste in front of people's driveways, and then it would all of a sudden get incredibly worse, and I'd be like, where's the truck? And then all of a sudden I'd see it coming down the road, or going past, like going down an adjacent road. They're like, oh yep, there it is, and that makes sense. And the backs of them are covered in sludge, in trash sludge, melted, hot, seeping trash fluid. And so you might be asking, well, why is it in a garbage crisis? What happened? Well, I started looking up about seeing if I could find anything in relation to the mass amount of trash, garbage that's all over people's lawns, in front of and behind in alleyways, various establishments, and literally overflowing bins to the point where people can't fit it in the bins. I'm sure you saw in some of the footage, they have to put it beside, or what clearly has been happening is they'd have to store it in their garages or a different part of a building unit and wait till the next day for the trucks to come around again. Well, apparently, some years ago, I don't remember in terms of what I looked up, what various news outlets said in terms of how many. It might have been close to a decade, or at least, maybe, at the very least, more than 5 years ago. There were cutbacks to not only actual functioning of various the landfills used for disposing the waste of not just Montreal, but the entirety of the greater Montreal area, Laval, Terrebonne, Longueuil, Repigne, I think that's the one next to Terrebonne on the mainland. Pledge Chartrand on Jesus Island with Laval. All the rest. were cutbacks to actual for purchasing, and I believe as well certain companies that were in ties with dump operations, actual manufacturing and maintenance work for machines to dispose of the waste, both in terms of recycling products and general, well, what's considered general trash products, at least what most municipalities in Canada consider general trash products, and food waste, bioorganic material. And these cutbacks happened, and another in relation to that, one of the cutbacks was the trucks, in terms of the garbage trucks going throughout. I'm going to use specifically Montreal for this, the entirety of Montreal Island, because I don't know how it affected Laval or Longueuil that much. From when I was living in Laval, clearly it hasn't affected them near as much as it's affected this city. So, anyway. From Montreal, they cut back certain, I believe, routes of the trucks, and they also cut back days of patrol, of actually going out and picking up the waste. They cut it back from what I guess was initially 2 days a week to 1, however many years ago. And apparently at the time it caused some amount of mass uproar from citizens. But, well, municipal officials didn't listen. And, well, as this happened, garbage built up. Because, and this also relates to, well, capitalist consumerism. Because, as is very clear, Montreal is a consumerist, materialist hellscape. It's buy, sell, as are many extensively large metropolitan communities. But Montreal, it's incredibly extensive. And overconsumption of products is rampant. People just buy, and that builds up. When eventually things break, or they're not needed anymore, or they're a one-time use item, well, people just chuck them. They throw them away. So this mass overconsumption, fueled by a consumerist ideology, well, it's led to massive backlogs, and what should have been, when they made these cutbacks, double time need to be done by the waste workers to actually keep up with the amount of garbage flow. But they didn't. And another piece to this, so in combination with these cutbacks from the operators of the landfills, and the overconsumption, and from the industrial areas contributing to the mass carbon pollution and mass fossil fuel usage, overproduction of said materials, because, you know, capitalist privatization and mass profiteering in commercialism, and neo-commercialism, more so, with performative environmentalism that isn't at all genuine environmental protection in the slightest. Well, it's led to an absolute waste disposal catastrophe. Like, you know, it's a catastrophe. Like, so many areas are so unsanitary and so... Oh, speak of the devil. Again. Well, first time it was the car that I mistook, the paramedics that I mistook for being a police cruiser, but this time it actually was. Okay, the smell isn't as bad right here, and thankfully the rain has been able to dissipate and kind of quell the fumes a bit, but it's still all around. It's a constant. And so in further researching this, and I want to find this out because I haven't found out a concrete answer yet. I don't know if... So, the main landfills, I believe there's 3 of them, that the entirety of the GMA uses are all located on the outskirts of the city of Terrebonne, Quebec, which is just north of Laval, on the mainland of Canada. It's not on the 2 islands. It's Montreal Island or Jesus Island. But they're all accessible from going through Terrebonne, and from the islands that's accessible from, well, the Trans-Canada Highway system. At least I believe that one is connected to the Trans-Canada Highway, but a highway system nonetheless, a connecting bridge. And I don't know if those are owned up by the cities, or, well, maybe separately. I don't know if that's owned up, if the dumps are owned up by the Terrebonne municipal government, or if they're operated by private companies, by waste disposal corporations. I don't know yet. There are at least 4 abandoned landfill areas here on Montreal Island that were used as far back, I believe, as the 1990s for waste disposal of Montreal. And they were all privatized. They were all operated by independent companies, which definitely made mass off of, well, taxpayer money and well, in cooperation with the city, and, well, privatized land. But regardless, they were private from everything I could find. But they all closed down for whatever reason. Still haven't been able to figure that out. Maybe they got too full. But anyway, then these newer landfills were constructed in Terrebonne, on the outskirts of it. And they act as the main dumping grounds for all of the GMA's garbage. But because of said cutbacks I mentioned earlier, in terms of operation and machinery utilization, apparently it's resulted in the mass buildup of a lot of garbage there. So much so that if they don't catch up on the amount that's accumulating at a quick enough rate soon, it's estimated by 2030 all 3 landfills will be completely full to the brim and they won't be able to use them anymore. And it'll probably take another few years to actually just solely dispose of all the trash that will just be in them at that time without adding any more to it. And all the while, I'm sure, because of how idiotic people are, because of psychological disorder, traumatization, and indoctrination, they don't have a disorder present, contributing to this mass consumerist overusage, unnecessary usage of various one-shot done items. It's gonna get worse if they don't stop. Because if not those landfills, they're gonna have to open up another spot for dumping the waste somewhere. And given the overflow you can see in the streets of Montreal, I don't think the city, including the island that it almost entirely encompasses, don't think it has room for it. So, yeah, that's absolutely something to take note of if you're planning to live in Montreal, to move here, or take a trip here for a visit. Be prepared to bring a gas mask. And if you're not gonna bring a gas mask for yourself, then god damn it, bring me a gas mask. I want a gas mask. Please. So I'm at one of the main intersections here in Rosemont, and I'm just charging my phone under this, well, I guess, not so protective glass overhead, but I just want to highlight this because I'll continue to talk about it in a bit. The gang tags in this area are all over the place. They quite literally take up, I'd say, more than half, obviously, or some amount, almost on at least every 4 or 5 buildings in a major business area like this, in terms of, well, small businesses, or just a cluster of establishments that have been set up. At least one wall face of the exterior of the building has been tagged to some degree. And I want to highlight this because, though obviously I am not morally at all in favor of gang crime and their organizations, what they do, again, as I said in the last video, I have to hand it to them. They're members that are doing the territorial tagging. It's quite a level of commitment. I've noticed this especially here in St. Leonard, on various buildings where clearly people have climbed up on top of roofing and have done graffiti work. And clearly most of it not just local youths engaging in deviancy or a hired, commissioned street artist, or even just independent illegal street artist. No, it's very clear that the tags represent various organized crime units. And if I can shield my phone a bit, I go over here, I think you can even see some, if I try and actually stay under the concrete overheads. That would be smart of me. If I'm recalling, yep, even here, various smaller markings, but there's clearly someone got on top of the telephone booth and sprayed it. I'm just impressed how, with the amount of police patrols in areas like this, I'm just surprised how they're able to do said, spray paint work as quickly as possible without law enforcement noticing them. I'm sure they probably had some run-ins with the cops, chasing them away, or engaging in some sort of pursuit with them. But, well, I'm just, on that level, on just a technical level and determination level, for amount of effort put into a rather ridiculous and idiotic display of unethical practices. Well, I'll just hand it to the commitment part to it, but all the rest, not so much. Yep. That's what you think it is, people. That is an IKEA-sponsored, built, or, well, I'm sure 1% of their profit went into the building of said bus stop. Or more specifically, a bus terminal. Just a shelter for the stop. Or maybe at least 1% of their profit went into lobbying to have the municipality build, well, the row, because it continues on, these terminals here continue on down this main boulevard. Well, they might have lobbied a portion of their financial amalgamation to build these stations and waiting areas. Either way, it's performative and done to just incentivize the public and also make it more cushy for any of their representatives and executives, I guess, when they're on the way to work at whatever branches they have around the city. But as far as I'm concerned, that is the most sorry excuse I've ever seen for performative activism. No, I mean it. That's the most intelligence-numbing idiocy I've ever seen. It's fake boxes, by the way. That's not real. It's wood that's designed to look like IKEA packaging boxes all around it. It looks atrocious as far as I'm concerned as well. Yeah, sure, it does its job. It's acting as just a little shelter for the bus stop. Doesn't matter as far as I'm concerned. It's God. It's propaganda. One, it's, as far as I'm concerned, this is like a physical manifestation of neo-advertisement agendaism, as if it's half a sculpture, half a bus terminal. And the other half, it's performative communal investment and support. So it's propaganda on top of, quite literally on top of propaganda. And in relation to neo-advertisement agendaism, it's just quite literally an advertisement for their company. Oh, get out of here, please. I've seen at least now 3 of you going up and down these roads. So yeah, that's an insult to my eyes. And as far as I'm concerned, to everyone else who lives around here. Oh, but now let me introduce you to this fine fella. So, everyone, this is Camden. He's my new mode of transportation for when I'm not dragging Cardi B around. So, earlier today, when I was making my way towards the community center for, well, activities and things of the sort, the activities area with the public library, for the last little while, I've been contemplating whether I should see about purchasing a bicycle, another bicycle. If you remember back to Timmy, my motorized bike. And I had looked in a general boutique thrift shop in Little McGraw when I was down there today, but thought it was too expensive, the ones they had, even though they were very cheap compared to the mega corporately manufactured and distributed bicycles. And then when I was making my way away from the church that I showcased, I found a small business bike shop. It was a fix-em-up old, well, they were a bike mechanic shop that fixed up old used bikes. And I walked in just to browse around, and I met the owner. I believe they were the owner, because they said that they fixed them up. But I told them my situation, that I'm homeless right now and a nomad, and I was wondering if they might have any cheap but workable bikes. And they showed me two. One of them was a children's bike, and then there was more of a teenager to young adult sized bike. And I tried them both out, and this is one of them, and I asked, how much did you want for it? And they said, well, I fixed this one up how I thought I could, but obviously there's still some issues with it, but it works completely fine. Let's say maybe $50. And I was like, really? For a bike, that's incredibly cheap. And so I went to the nearest ATM and paid $50 for him. And he has been working like a charm today. And I'm so glad that I now have something to transport me instead of walking all over the place. And this way, I don't even have to pay for buses if I was ever to get one within the city. Now, you might be thinking, well, Cam, with Cardi B, how are you going to drag Camden around? Don't worry, I'll figure out a way. Look, if Cardi can fit a tent, a bag full of a blanket, a pillow, 2 sleeping bags, a cooler, and all the other trinkets I have in them, then, well, I'm sure they could squeeze Camden in, or if not, I will drag both of them along with me. It can be done, don't worry. And if it's difficult, well, then that sucks for me, and I will deal with it. But I am just happy to be off my feet with Mr. Camden here. So, I'm now, oh yeah, and this is the park. You can't really see much of it because of, well, the darkness, but this is the park that I've been staying in. And it's called Maisonneuve Park is what I'll be calling it, but it's along those lines. I just looked at the name and already forgot it, pronunciation, but yeah, it's the biggest park in the city. But just down a ways is more of the central area of Rosemont, and it was very bustling during the day. Well, yesterday, because that's when I was last down there. So now, even though it's currently 1:58 a.m., I'm just going to go down there and see if it has a bit of a nightlife to it as well. And also showcase some more things in relation to gang territorial markings. So let's go. Western European style cathedral. It's an incredible design architecturally. They're definitely closed at this hour. Get used to the mechanics. Not much of a nightlife in terms of foot traffic or automobile traffic, but in terms of lighting, very pretty. Very neon luminescent. I smell raisin English muffins. I don't know why.
désolé, je ne sais pas français, ce que va quoi? Anglais?
Non, français. Tu connais le point, non? Beau show, non?
No. Change? Or...
Non.
Oh, light?
Non,
Cigarette?
ouais.
Ok. Désolé.
Ok.
Better look at it now. In the opposite direction. Pretty smooth control, Camden, despite your more rugged areas. I'm very thankful for it. It's very lightweight and flexible to maneuver. I could probably make a picture in the window somewhere, but yeah, I don't have needed insight to do so.
So I just looked back over footage I took of me riding Camden, and I don't know what was going on with the zoom in controls. Absolutely no clue. The thing was just rattling against belongings in my netted sleeve in my backpack. But anyway, so this is Rue Maison, which cuts straight through the center of Rosemont. And as you could tell, hopefully to some degree, it's very vibrant in terms of, well, business operations, various cultural practices, and things of the sort, minus the, well, gentrification. But what I want to point out is, once again, things like this. Now, this is very clearly an abandoned building, but it's been laid claim to by various gangs of the area, clearly, with it being littered in tagging, and as well as you can see, let me just walk up a bit. Things of the sort. Now, some of those could, from the looks of it, just be, well, personal signature tags from local graffiti artists, but there are also those on the wall of the Jean Coutu branch that are very clearly not just personal designs and actual tag markings. Now, two reasons for why that could be is, one, just for the predominant territorial gangs of the area that lay claim to most of the land in terms of operations. It could be just them marking their symbol, meaning that we claim that we own this area, or that we've taken over running of this neighborhood. Or it could also be a bit of a warning to some other business establishments who might, which I don't doubt because of financial desperation, be in affiliation to various gang syndicates across the city for obtaining some amount of protection money from them. Now, as far as I'm concerned, the only reason that gangs and cartels formed in the first place overall are because of bozos like that. More specifically, the systemic enforcement of that branch of government. And okay, so thing is, the history of gangs is very interesting across the world, but especially in relation to, first mainly in what we refer to as gangs, in terms of criminology, coming out of 1970s United States during the height of high epidemic of drug addiction starting to take hold. But it has a further back starting point, more so in the late 1950s, where, because of exploitative capitalism, and more specifically what was being, I guess, starting to be pushed into the era of neoliberalism, came about mass, even with the so-called prompting of various cultural backgrounds and various other demographics to obtain this self-independence and promoting their communities through individualistic free market. Individualistic free market. It led to further financial disparity, and also in relation to specific demographics, racist and sexuality oppression in terms of expression. And as well as, well, nationalism, specific form of racism. And as this began to build, members of certain communities began to look for means of profit to pay back rising expenses for their areas that they were inhabiting. Predominantly those of Black, Hispanic, Latino, Indigenous American, and as well as a certain amount of Central East Asian ethnicities, as well as those of Italian or just southwestern European descent, Spanish, Portuguese. So, in relation to this, it started going on the rise, usage of various drugs that weren't in and of themselves highly addictive. It was because of social conscious loneliness and absolvement of trauma that a massive spike took hold in the usage of them. And there were those who saw an opportunity. Okay, just to point out, on this is a rather cute design, just to break up the tension, set against, well, yet more mass land exploitation and ultra-capitalist nonsense. So, yeah, well, this explains the vacant lot. But anyway, there were those who saw an opportunity to gain private profit off of the substances that were making their way into America. And so, various people, not in terms of their demographics, but individuals within them, began starting underground operations for distribution and or production of said substances, putting them out into various communities. Many of which, in terms of the substances, had been in some form being used as euphorics and psychedelics, have been utilized by different people groups for centuries. So they were already familiar items within communities, but had mainly been previously, before this, at the beginning of the 20th century, been suppressed from usage in, well, public legalities. So I guess to some degree reintroduced to communities. And as this began to take hold, more and more demand started happening for it because of mass need to fuel addiction, because of the reasons mentioned prior. And this led to basically loyalty packs forming and rivalries forming between various, what would later, getting into the 1970s, become known as gang syndicates. These loyalty packs forming as basically other gangs being competitors in both protection of specific communities within many major metropolitan areas, as well as private free market and so-called economic competition. And same with the cartels that later formed mainly in, well, most of Central America going into South America, as well as well, the idea of underground crime syndicates for privatized economic financial gain began to take hold globally. Cartels began to form mainly as well in Eastern Europe, especially in the Balkans. And as well as in relation to this, what was starting to come out, especially in the 1960s, a rise in much of Central and Southern Europe, that of mafias forming, which eventually made their way back to North America. Well, technically some amount began prior to that of what would be considered gangs, what would in criminology be considered mafia activity, but, well, it began to, bottom line is they all began to take hold further into leaning to the latter half of the 20th century. And they became more powerful, increasingly more powerful, for each individual nation that they operate in, many of which centered around, in terms of those outside of the United States, funneling product to the United States and Canada and England and Australia and France and Netherlands and Ireland and Northern Ireland and Scotland and Wales and just much of the westernized world, funneling of the actual product substances to them for it to then be redistributed by sellers in the countries. And, well, in relation to well-known members of mafias, gangs, cartels, whatever you want to call organized crime, well, famous members, you can name a few. Al Pacino, not Al Pacino, what am I thinking of? He's obviously an actor who's played a member of fictional mob character. Al Capone in the Chicago alcohol prohibition era, and redistribution substance, as well as the Crips and the Bloods as gangs mainly centered out of the American state of California. And then there was a Belgian gang, I can't remember their name. Pablo Escobar, massive. I believe he specifically made the main compounds for creating cocaine out of Colombia, as well as what was his name? El Chavez, something along another half of his name. I think part of his name was El Chavez, famous Mexican cartel leader. In terms of the more popularly known criminals in the legal systems of the world, in terms of their eyes, I can't fully recall most of the more famous ones at the moment, but you get the point. It became widespread. So, to dispel rumors that are out there, or the idea that, the very prejudiced and bigoted idea that most of the ideologic culture of crime syndicates came from specific cultural beliefs, or non-problematic cultural beliefs, or even to some degree detrimental cultural beliefs and practices of specific groups of people. Well, no, that's completely nonsense. Now, obviously, in terms of the certain detrimental practices did influence the creation of them. Yeah, I absolutely don't doubt that, for sure, as well as oppressive, incredibly problematic societal trauma that's towards non-problematic cultural traditions and ideological practices, which we've clearly seen. But, well, I think you get the point. Okay, I'm gonna try and get some more footage going down certain roads along here, and then make my way to certain area, because I'm going to go to a specific place tonight. I love it when the recording cuts out immediately when you start it, unbeknownst to you. Okay, so going forward, I am going to have to just move all the things that I usually carry in my side knitted sleeves of my backpack into a different compartment when I'm putting my phone into the sleeves to record. So what happened was, and if you can't tell, it's the next morning. What happened was I biked up and down at least 3 different roads after leaving, the central area of Rosemont, and I had done so to demonstrate the high amount of Southern European architecture that could be seen in the area. But considering I didn't actually film any of it, well, there you go. So before leaving St. Leonard, I'll go back to that area and just take footage of it. Probably for the next part. Well, yes, it will be for the next part. What am I talking about? So you might be asking, though, where am I now? Well, I am outside, I believe it's called Rosemont Maisonneuve Hospital, because I decided to go to the ER last night. Why, you might be asking? Well, if you watched my, well, we aren't going to get out of these dictatorly systems unless we refuse to use them en masse video. Well, towards the end, I mentioned about how about 3.5 weeks ago or so, when I was in northern Laval, I noticed that there's a well enough sized, I guess, lump that's formed by the carotid bifracture, my carotid artery, on the slit. Probably shouldn't be standing on the most narrow section of this walkway. That'd be smart. On the left side of my neck. Now, I'm not overly worried about it, even with the prospect of paraganglioma, cancer carotid body tumor, because well, I don't think it does any good to consciously stress about it extensively. Subconsciously, in an apathetic sense, obviously can't help that, but consciously I'm not worried about it. It still isn't causing any sort of major disrupt, as I said in the video, to function of swallowing or vocal projection. So there's that. But I just thought I would get it checked out now that I'm in Montreal, just to be sure. It hasn't grown at all, at least as far as I could tell. Well, from what I can feel, but I'm not entirely certain. But well, yeah, I'm at high risk for cancer development, because one of my parents has developed bladder tumors, benign, and they've had treatments done for those. And my grandmother on my other parents' side died of malignant pancreatic cancer. So I'm at a higher predisposition for it, and not to mention the variety of various poorly made processed foods I've eaten over the years, and things of the sort, and being exposed to mass particle pollutants in the air, more so being here in Montreal. So but well, yeah, just so anyway, the ER doctor here referred me to a clinic that is just down a ways on this road. Now, they had told me that they had gotten me an appointment there first thing in the morning. So quite literally just a few hours later, and now the next day, because I got here past midnight. But then I received a text message from the automated system, I guess it would be, for the clinic's notification of appointments, and for cancellations, that it would be on the 12th at 9:35 a.m. So I went to ask the intake workers, but well, they didn't know what it could. There might have been a misunderstanding. So all I can do is actually go down to the clinic and just see. But well, I'll do that. And hey, maybe I'll get some footage of me going down there on Camden. And actually make sure that it's recording this time. But anyway, I just want to cap off some things that I was talking about in relation to gang activity here in the city. As well as just, I guess, revise somewhat, not revise, but clear up an opinion I've held on homelessness for a while. So, in relation to various syndicates of underground criminal funneling of money under an oppressive capitalist system. As I said in the video where my backpack was stolen in Laval, to any gang members or anyone affiliated with various crime units or anyone affiliated just with gang activity in relation specifically to the greater Montreal area, I have no quarrel with you in terms of some attempt to dismantle your operations. I care about how depraved it is, but I am no threat to any of you in terms of, well, immediate problems. Trust me. I think that what you do in terms of operation, mass money laundering, protection money, purposely trying to get clients addicted to substances to then keep charging up prices for profit to a point where they become financially desperate and just purposely trying to edge on an addiction or an addictive behavioral pattern, as well as mass violence in terms of killings and torture and arson. And threats made on the lives of various common citizens, as well as even obviously corrupt politicians, corporate business owners, police, all of which, as far as I'm concerned, are also highly corrupt, just as corrupt as you. Well, yeah, that's it. You're all morally deplorable. You, I'd feel to say that many of you, at least those within your systems of operation, are under the illusion that they're different than police. They're different than the authoritarian economic sector, those who are in the legalized systems of operation, depending on your country. You're not. Not in the slightest. you're just as morally disgusting. You commit mass murder, which is already something that the elites of society do towards your communities. You engage in mass profiteering of, well, finance for so-called financial security, when really all that is just amalgamation of wealth. And it's the same thing that your oppressors have done to you, siphoning away profit from those of your clientele. And in terms of brutality, well, in relation to how police brutality is exacted upon those of your demographics, predominantly those who are, well, sadly, a majority of those who operate in certain gang or cartel or mafia sectors, well, you're exacting just as much violence onto those who disrupt your routines as the police do in terms of cultural degradation and profiling and all the rest. So you're just as unintelligent and ethically disgraceful as far as I'm concerned, and have in many regards a lot of internalized prejudice of that, taking on the ideals of your suppressor psychologically as a trauma response. So you are all incredibly corrupt, just as corrupt as the surface world free market flow. You just operate in the illegal underground flow of free market and intimidation and murderous sociopathy and egocentrism. So, yeah, again, I'm not gonna get in your way physically. Don't worry. I'll investigate you, as I have been doing, and all my various other investigations of wherever I end up. But that's it, because I don't think it's morally right of me to exact authority over you. So there you go. Bottom line, you're terrible people and you're highly corrupt. So self-reflect and try and change your ideals. Now, in relation to sort of tweaking something I've said before about homelessness, and I mentioned it in part 5 of exploring Ottawa when I was there, how most homeless who beg on the streets, there's this misconception that they make a lot of money doing it, or that if you pass them by and don't give them some amount of currency, someone else will. Oh, someone else will do it. I still stand by both of those claims. It is very rare that someone panhandling makes a large sum of cash flow to be able to pay off debts of theirs, if they were trying to rent a place, let's just say expenses for renting, or even a large amount of food supply and hydration. In terms of spending for homeless and jobless, though they're not concretely the same, they can be two separate things. Spending is a constant. There is no mass saving for most people. And no, it's not a matter of spending your money fucking wisely. It's not. When you need necessities immediately, not just food, not just water, medications, antibiotic ointments, just general first aid kits, or general first aid supplies, clothes, general hygienics, or oral hygienics, toiletries, depending on, say, a small means of transportation that won't constantly cost you. Well, those are always in the immediate when you are homeless, and especially when jobless, or even if you have a job and you're homeless, because mass widespread privatization is destructive. But in regards to that, though I still stand by those claims, and I also still stand by the claim that most homeless are drug addicts, in relation to North America, South America, and Europe, obviously, as well as a large portion of Eastern Asia and Oceania. Even though I stand by that, that does not excuse, as far as I'm concerned, on a general articulation level, minus the paradox of existence and things being contradicting. I don't condone ableism towards those who are drug addicts and on the streets, as that is most likely one of the main contributing factors as to why they are on the streets, and you cannot just kick an addiction like that. Or the next time, most likely, or the next time after that, or the next time after that. Relapses are very common in the world. Very common. They happen more than most average people who have no knowledge of psychiatry or psychology would like to think or believe. But despite all of that, in regards to globalized social paranoia, I've said how I believe that people, if we want to get out of these oppressive societal structures, we need to actually go against them and stop using the things they provide, at least from them specifically, on a wide scale. And that includes going out on the streets and stop buying up property, stop paying for a leasing space in a building unit, stop purchasing an excessive amount of unnecessary, depending on how many people need it, over purchasing vehicles, stop utilizing vehicles so much when you don't need to. That's the only way I see any genuine change coming about. But so in regards to this, just to clear up my thought process on that, now especially, after having formed my theory of social paranoia that's affected the world on a global scale, there would, even despite all the harshness towards and classism towards homeless, there will be people who will help you. There will. I've been baffled since leaving Ottawa about at just how many times I came across someone who was willing to actually lend me a hand. And more than I had even, and I knew after deciding to set off from Ottawa and continue my travels that there will be people who will help, but this is part of my social paranoid disorder. I didn't expect it to be as many as those who did. Whether it's been hitchhiking and getting rides, someone giving me directions, willing to talk just for a bit about my situation, which happened recently, very recently, or someone actually giving me money to be able to purchase food or some other necessity. Or someone willing to direct me to an area or a organization operating close by that might provide good resources. That, well, even if it is encroaching in some way, but regardless, genuinely trying to help. There will be people who will help you. If, though, what I have found in my social observation, you will only find people who will help you most often if you go looking for help. If you go seeking some amount of, aid, you will find it. And not most often, at least from what I can tell, maybe they are begrudgingly doing it, and they're just, feeling like they should help in a more histrionic sense. But regardless, most people I met do not seem to be unwilling, from what I can tell, to actually help you. So I just wanted to clear the air on that. And yeah. Oh, and one more thing actually I want to state. And this is just going to be in a future video once I get close to the area, because I've decided I'm not leaving Montreal until I actually go explore this place. So I mentioned earlier in the video that Montreal Island is mainly encompassed by the city of Montreal. And I had initially thought, as I'm sure I've said before in exploring Laval, that from what I had seen, especially on an aerial view of map, satellite maps, that Montreal was the only municipality on the island. Whereas with Jesus Island, it was only 2 municipalities, Laval, and then the smaller city of Pledge Chartrand. But I was wrong. Apparently, and this is very interesting, there is another city, a small city, on Montreal Island. Now, and it's called Côte Saint-Luc. At least I think that's how I think it's called Côte Saint-Luc, if I'm pronouncing it right. But you might be saying to yourself, well, Cam, that's really not surprising. Most cities around the world, many larger municipal areas, have other municipalities bordering them, or large cities as well. And in relation to Canada, there are many like that, like Mississauga. It's a large city that borders Toronto. All the cities within the GTA are bordering Toronto. Brampton, Vaughan, Markham, Oshawa, Burlington. Technically as well, Hamilton touches Burlington, so technically Hamilton. There's a somewhat touching is Dartmouth next to Halifax, in relation to, let's say, China, there's Hong Kong, and bordering that close by would be Shenzhen and Guizhou, I think is another one there, but they're all close together, bordering. So what's so surprising about this? Well, in relation to how most cityscapes are laid out, with those that have other cities bordering them, as being neighboring metropolitan areas, well, most often they're located just adjacent to them, and their exterior, like the outskirts of the city, the edge, often in that regard, when it's encompassing or it's built bordering beside another city, at some point one city's suburbs will touch the countryside. They will touch the more rural areas as you start to get out into the counties, away from the actual cityscape. But this small city, Côte Saint-Luc, doesn't do that. In fact, it doesn't touch the rural areas at all. It's on Montreal Island, one, and two, it is completely enclosed, landlocked by Montreal. And it's right beside the boroughs of West Montreal, Dorval, Lachine, and I forget the name of the district to the north of it, but it's encompassed, well, it's surrounded by them. And it's not a borough itself. Many people actually don't know that, in terms of even those, from what I looked up, living here in Montreal. Many think it's just another borough of Montreal. No, it's a city. It has a city hall, a city council, and everything. And it has, I believe, its own police force, from what I looked up. I'm sure there's some amount of joint operations, though, in terms of communal policing between Côte Saint-Luc and Montreal. But it's interesting because you don't see many landlocked cities, especially tiny ones, really anywhere in the world. like, yeah, most I'm thinking of, you see many small landlocked countries, such as Liechtenstein being enclosed by Switzerland and Austria, Andorra enclosed by France and Spain, San Marino completely landlocked by Italy, Vatican landlocked by Italy as well, Luxembourg again enclosed by France, Belgium, Germany, Gambia completely enclosed by, well, it's enclosed by Senegal on almost all its borders, except it has a coastal border. So I guess technically not entirely landlocked. Lesotho completely enclosed by South Africa, and Eswatini, desolate, completely enclosed by Mozambique and northeastern South Africa. So you don't, so that's with countries, but with cities you don't typically see that anywhere. And what's even more interesting about this city is that it's only, from what I can tell on the map, in relation to places I've been, let's go with the example of Le Chute, Quebec, which I was in not too long ago, it's only slightly bigger, it seems, in terms of size, than, only slightly bigger. I don't know about population size, but it's overall slightly bigger than Le Chute. And as well as that, its actual borders, I really gotta not stand there. I gotta stop walking back and forth to that one spot. In terms of its borders, it's very interesting. From what I looked at on the map, so the city is sandwiched right in between the districts of Montreal West and Lachine, Dorval, whatever the one to the north is, and a train yard patch where I think it's just, well, a stopping area for various rail cars. And there also might be some industrial mining going on there as well. I can't exactly tell from an aerial view, but I'm sure I'll find out once I research a bit more. But the mainland of the city, and I'm calling it the mainland of the city, is the border between the city and Montreal is divided by a train track that runs under, I believe, some overpasses to actually get into Côte Saint-Luc. But from what it's displaying on a digital map, on Google Maps, if you zoom in, there's off in what would be surrounded by a neighborhood in West Montreal called Hampstead, there's at least 10 apartment buildings in a row, in a line, on a specific road that are counted as being a part of the land territory of Côte Saint-Luc, as well as a neighborhood that should be in the northern half of Hampstead that's also part of the municipality of Côte Saint-Luc. And it's off of the city's main body of its administrative division. So that's interesting. And looking at those buildings and that neighborhood, and actually just at the city itself from an aerial view, there's many properties that look very, very wealthy, is all I'll say right now. So I can drum up maybe a few theories as to why that may be, but I'm gonna save that until I actually go and explore the city, which will only be one part because it's a very small city. So, yeah, there's that. Some bit of information I just found out. Okay, so it's now 8:34 a.m. I'm going to go see if I can clear up the confusion with the clinic that I was referred to for a radiological scan of some kind, most likely an ultrasound of my neck. So, see you later.
One. And you're on. Four. برد. هذا خلاص. farther up than I thought it was. Visibility for oncoming cars coming from the left. Dastardly garbage trucks. Oh God, I can smell it from here. Just for visual. If you're still recording, that's how far away I am from the truck. And I can absolutely smell the odor. see it. The garbage is never ending. Why was I never in this area for those trucks? Absolutely terrible over here. Build up and odor.
Wow, that is a phenomenal Dragon Ball Z mural design. I've never actually seen a sidewall mural design of anything remotely related to Dragon Ball Z ever. Oh, okay, oh my god. I thought there was a truck nearby while I was smelling this horrible odor. But then I kept going down this road and realized I couldn't see any truck. Where is it? Where could it be? And then I actually bothered to look down at the stains on the road. Oh! And I'm realizing, yeah, this is the garbage sludge. Stains from a combination of heat and now the rain having washed it onto the road. Yeah, well, I guess the precipitation wasn't all good to get rid of the odor. God damn it. Oh, please. Anyone watching, send me a gas mask, please. I'll find an address. Just mail it there, please.